What's up, guys? Guess who read Lisa Marie Presley's book? And then guess who started looking up all of the Presley family charts, and I got really excited, and I was going to do this video on family astrology and take you on a whirlwind tour of all of the similarities of the people who are related to each other in the Presley family and how cool it all is. You can hear the excitement in my voice. I tried. And I don't think you would have been able to follow me very comfortably because I was just switching charts every 2 seconds. So then it occurred to me that it might be worthwhile to use the Presley family for something else. And so I'm starting with Elvis because, of course, Elvis is Elvis. But one thing that we know about Elvis is that he had some substance problems that worsened and intensified and sort of led to his death, right? He didn't die specifically of drugs, but we know he had a drug problem that was kind of out of control when he died. Lisa Marie Presley talks about that in her book. And then also in her book, Lisa Marie Presley talks about the family history of having substance problems and how kind of disappointed she was to get as far as she did in her life without having a substance problem, and then she developed one. And when I looked in the charts, I could see it. So I'm not, again, we're not here to judge. I just want to gesture to the energy that was involved because it makes sense when you look at it this way. And the point is not to shame anybody, or again, I'm not ever doing this so that we can all look at someone and judge them. It is more that as I learned how to read energy, which is essentially what this is, I learned to develop a more compassionate understanding for ways in which you might handle energy, and I was able to look back on my own life and let myself off the hook a little bit for situations that did get out of control, because when I look back on it, it was impossible energy, and or at least really hard to handle. And when you don't know any better, you do your best. So most of the time, we're all doing the best with what we have, right? And that's what I want to show you here. So this is Elvis Presley's chart. There's a lot that you can say about it. My favorite thing to say is that he had a Leo South Node, and your South Node is how you behave, just it's how you're programmed to behave or how you come in behaving. And not only that, the South Node is here. He had Pluto on the South Node, and so that is an exclamation point because Pluto is a really intense energy. So it is both how you behave and how you basically struggle to get away from that behavior into the more productive North Node behavior. So having a Leo South Node is being a star, right? Someone who shines brightly. And then the Pluto it's actually in a different sign. If you can see, it's in Cancer, whereas this is the Leo what is it, glyph, there's the right word. And so it's this emotional intensity about being a star, needing to shine, and these things are in the 8th house. And this is where I'm going to focus, is on the water houses, which are 4, 8, and 12. And so when you have major energy in a water house, the way that I want to think about it for the purposes of this, water houses can be many things, but the water signs and water energy has a lot to do with satisfaction. And so you can chase goals and chase dreams and get there. And then the water energy says more. So Pluto tends to, as I said, be intense. And so, and it is a water planet. A lot of people, when they initially learn astrology, think that Pluto should be fire because you do feel like this burning intensity. whenever you have an active Pluto or whenever you're dealing with Pluto in your chart. But it is actually a water planet. It rules Scorpio, which is a water sign. And so it is this turbulent emotional intensity. When you take Pluto and you put it in a water house, which again, 4, 8, and 12, it is very hard to say, okay, enough is enough. It doesn't matter what sign Pluto is in. And then this is the same for other troublesome planets. There is a restlessness. There is a churning. When you have needs, they feel bottomless. Water houses are difficult to navigate. And so to spell this out a little bit more, the 4th house is the home and family house. So when you have a major or disruptive planet in the home and family house, there is this like endless need for security, endless need for validation, endless need to have everything the way that you like it. Think about like, having the crust cut off your sandwiches just so. It's that. But that type of fussiness, it's like throwing a tantrum if you don't get your way. Then in the 8th house, and of course the chart progresses and kind of like the issues get more complicated as you go around the wheel to the 12th house, which is the most complicated. The 8th house is the sex, death, and other people's money house. So that is where you meet someone else, right? The 8th house has to do with people that you are very, very close to. So in the 8th house, do you think we can get close enough? We cannot. There is always a way to get closer in the 8th house. And so to have Pluto and the South Node in the 8th house, there's a lot of emphasis on the opinions and needs and wants of people around you. And there can be a lot of catering to those people so that they give you what you want. And then it's the cycle of need, because it's like if you're always giving other people what they want and then expecting what you want in return, obviously that's a little bit of a logical fallacy, right? But people get really hung up there, whether it's a transit of something intense in the 8th house or having some intense energy there to begin with. And then the 12th house is the most complicated house because it's the least conscious. I think I can safely make that argument. So this is the subconscious house. So that like the 8th house can be a paranormal house, I also have to say, and Elvis did have some stuff going on with that, I think. But the 12th house is where it gets really paranormal. So 8th house is like you can feel the like ghosts of your nearest and dearest around. But in the 12th house, it's everybody. It's everything. It's the ethos or the vibe of the times. And so people with a lot of 12th house energy, it's like the universe isn't enough. A lot of people with intense energy in the 12th house have some hang-ups about God. So the 9th house is the God house in the traditional religious sense, but the 12th house is like, I think like God is a loving figure. In the 9th house, you can deal a lot with an angry God or like believe that God is mad at you. And that has a lot to do with like tantrums or like, you can say like, well, I followed all the religious rules and therefore I should be rewarded. Like that's kind of a 9th house struggle. But in the 12th house, it's like God has abandoned me, or I feel alone in this universe despite the fact that there is an entire universe around you. It's like you feel singled out and like really out of control. And what I mean by that is in the 12th house, because it's a subconscious house, when you have something in there that's not great, either by birth or by transit, you try to make an impact on the outer world, and it doesn't work as well as, like, basically, like, the results are strange. The results are indirect. The results are not what you intended. When you see transits of things in the 12th house, or transits like, so meaning if you have planets there by birth and then they get transited, basically all bets are off as to what the outcome is going to be. It is truly out of your conscious control. So dealing with that is not pleasant, as you might imagine. Okay, now I'm going to layer on Lisa Marie Presley's chart on top of Elvis's chart, just to show you something. And basically, like, this is what caught my eye. So here she is. She has energy that I'll talk a little bit more about in a second. But remember that people are transits. So people's birth information, that's a snapshot of the sky when they were born. So for Elvis, Lisa Marie is a permanent transit of February 1st, 1968, right? But what caught my eye was that Elvis was having some really major transits. So I had to look up what his career was at the time that she was born, and it was waning. Okay. The transiting south node was in his 10th house. That's a year and a half of uphill struggle, anything related to career. Uranus, as you can see right here, was beginning to transit his 10th house. That's career change. And when, like, this line is the most that you can hope to achieve during your time on Earth. And this is a man who is wildly popular. So this is him beginning to find that the things that he was achieving were no longer satisfying or no longer working well. And if you look up his career at the time of Lisa Marie Presley's birth, you'll see that that was the case. That was what was happening. Then Pluto also was about to enter his 10th house, which it would have maybe a year or two later, which makes like increasing demands on, like, I need to achieve something, I need to do something. And so then Elvis is having comeback tours and comeback specials, and he's like trying to come back. And that just continued for the rest of his life, of like, there was a lot of declaring of like, Elvis is back, right? And so Pluto and Uranus are transiting in this direction, so counterclockwise, but the south node transits in this direction, it goes clockwise. So this moves much faster than these two things. So this is more temporary, but these were more permanent, okay? But most importantly, Neptune right here in the 12th house, this is Neptune's house. So this is what I think made the substance use really intensify, because it's the sense of like, nothing that I'm doing is working. Like, it's not that I'm doing the same things that I've always done, but the effects are on the outside world are not what I'm used to. And also Neptune breeds this dissatisfaction with the status quo, essentially. And the idea is that you kind of lose some attachments to regular physical reality. You tend to be more withdrawn. You tend to, like, it's not a great time for popularity, and it's a slow moving planet. And with the size of this house, it was probably, I don't know, maybe 8 years. That's just me eyeballing it. I could very much be wrong, but it's a slow-moving planet, although the 12th house here is not big for him, which doesn't really matter because it's about to get a little bit morbid, but it's just to further demonstrate my point. When Neptune gets to this line, which is the ascendant, then again, it's going this way, so it's coming down. It's supposed to be a time of rebirth, so that you just kind of like lose some of your attachments to regular reality that no longer work for you. You're more quiet, you're more withdrawn. It can be spiritualizing, but when you feel like you've lost control of your conscious volition, that's incredibly dangerous. So this transit is not happening to everyone all the time, right? But it's a very odd time when it does begin, because you're just like, what is going on with me? I don't understand. Okay, so here's the morbid part. I'm gonna show you the transit of the day that he died. So strap in. And you can't use you really, I don't know, maybe in 20 years I'll be able to say, oh, I can predict death with astrology. I haven't seen anything that's like slam dunk of like, oh yes, that's death. So don't freak out if you have similar transits. That's not fair to you, and I don't subscribe to the idea that you can do that. I can look and see as I can right here of like, oh, okay. This would have been an intense time physically for him. But you can see that Neptune here is just over the ascendant. And so, like I said, this would have been like a period of quote unquote rebirth, right? I did say that, but remember my whole hang up with transit math, which is that you have to progress things forward a little bit by half a degree or a degree, depending on the age of the person, in order to accurately time these transits. So Neptune was a lot closer to the ascendant. Like you see this little line that tells you like it's a little bit off, so a little bit into the first house. No, it was on the line. So Neptune was basically like coming into consciousness. And so the habits that he had developed here with Neptune in the 12th house would no longer have been working for him. So like this, the 12th house, it can be really spiritualizing if you have infinite patience, but what you tend to do more than anything is develop strange coping mechanisms. And also, this is the sleep house. You can sleep not a lot, you can sleep a lot, you can have crazy dreams, but it does tend to knock you off your schedule. You're like you don't function on a normal human schedule. Lisa Marie Presley's book, he talks about this or references this, that he was awake like in the middle of the night and he was sleeping during the day. And maybe that's the rock star lifestyle, I don't know. But basically like the coping mechanisms like this, in a way it's a reality check, but Neptune is not about like physical reality. So what you should think when you see something transiting the ascendant is like stuff is being pulled into your conscious awareness. So but with like basically you can develop a backlog of stuff that you're really not ready to deal with because you're not dealing with reality, and then it comes over the ascendant. It's like, oh shit. It can be an oh shit moment. But Pluto here, I would say, was much more of the culprit as to the physical demands on his body that would have been really intense at this time, because it was conjunct, which means next to Mars. And so whenever you have Pluto and Mars interacting, it's a power struggle. It's a huge demand for energy. So, and normally that demand is portrayed on the outside, but if you are in a state of bad physicality, this is really not good. Something that popped into my head while we're talking about morbid things is a lot when I see people who are older pass away, and they have like a spark of time a couple days before their death where like they're talking more, or they're bright and interactive, or they basically have like an intensification, like, or if their family members feel like they're coming back and then they die. Again, I'm sorry this is so morbid, but it's a phenomenon, right? Of like they seem to be getting better, they seem to like be coming back, and then they pass away. A lot of the time it's a Mars transit to their sun or moon that does this. And as Mars wears off, so Mars gives you energy when it transits, and often the excess of energy makes you really jittery, or it can make you really angry depending on how you handle Mars energy in the first place. But this is something that I see all the time of like Mars had just passed an aspect to the sun or the moon, and then that person died several days later. It's Mars. So it's just another way of saying that Pluto intensified Mars. And it won't, this won't kill you necessarily, but you have to handle it properly. And if you're not in good physical health, you could use this energy to get in good physical health. But I think that obviously that didn't work out. Finally, Saturn here is finishing the transit of his 8th house. And so this is the, not, you can't get anybody close enough with Saturn here. So this is an additional emotional struggle that had been going on for probably 2.5 years. And so if you have coping mechanisms in place already, which we know he did, it's not in dispute, that his biography discusses this, Lisa Marie discusses this, we're talking about known issues. I think Saturn probably would have intensified those issues. So that's that. And just, again, I'm trying to provide a compassionate explanation. There are a lot of other things that you can do when you have intense transits to water houses, or within water houses, but it's difficult because you can do all that you want to do, but is it satisfying? Is it hitting the spot? That's where it becomes really difficult, and that's where you can get impatient and just be like, well, screw this. I'm going to do something that makes me feel good. Of course, it probably won't in the long term, but you have to think short term versus long term of what's really good for me. Again, we're going for compassion and explanation. We're not going for judgment here. Now I'm going to switch to Lisa Marie Presley just to show you something. So Lisa Marie Presley here. What does she have? She has planets in water houses, and by the way, she has Pluto opposing Mars and her moon. I mean, she was an intense personality. When I found out she was an Aquarius, I was first, yay, because I am one. So, it just, but you wouldn't, I think the great part of her publishing her book is that she, while being notorious, she wasn't well known. It was just oh, she's doing this, she's doing that. She married Michael Jackson, she married Nicolas Cage, made interesting choices and had a pretty interesting life. There's a lot that I could say about her book, and I could go through it. And of course I did have fun, looking at her transits and seeing what caused what. And just anecdotally, when she married Nicolas Cage, Neptune was right here on the descendant. And if you know, normally whenever Neptune crosses a line, there's confusion about what that line represents. And so this line is literally the marriage line. And Neptune crossing this line is who am I married to? Because they were married for 4 months and Neptune was hopping in and out of this house. And that just, it makes me laugh because it's so accurate. So Lisa Marie Presley, her birth chart has Neptune in a water house. Look at this. When you see Neptune in the 4th house, I mean, this is textbook. It's going to sound like I'm just saying it because of her life story, but this is actually textbook. Often with Neptune in the 4th house, there is a family legacy or a family hero or a father figure who is larger than life. And so it's just, no one can replace daddy. I said that out loud and I cringed. But there can also be confusion about your paternity, which not in question here, right? Not in question at all. But I have seen that of people who are adopted or people who found out later in life that one of their relatives wasn't actually a relative, or someone they thought they weren't related to, they were, whatever. I think I just said the same thing twice. But I don't think this is enough to say oh, this person will have a substance abuse problem. None of these charts say this person will have a substance abuse problem, but you do run into satisfaction problems when you have a lot of planets in water houses. So let's count them: 1, 2, 3, 4 out of 10. So that's significant water energy. And so that would be something to watch throughout life. We do know when she admits to using substances the from an early age. It's in her book. Again, this is not saying anything to judge anything, okay? But her addiction problems developed when she gave birth to her twins, which happened in 2008. So I'm going to show you the chart of the day that the twins were born as the beginning. And again, like, I'm not saying like they caused this. They didn't. It was the energy. So here, this is, I also just need to say that her daughters have Leo South nodes, all of them. Her oldest daughter being almost 20 years apart from her younger daughters, they all have Leo South nodes. Elvis has a Leo South node. This stuff runs in families. I think it's so cool. She had Uranus conjunct her Mars, opposing the Pluto when her twins were born. And so again, like, Mars and Pluto is tremendous energy, and also having Mars in a water house, tremendous energy, and Uranus is a disruptive force. So it might have felt like losing access to this regenerative energy that she always felt she had, or like not feeling strong enough. Those are the keywords that are jumping to mind. There could have been other stuff at play, but either way, Uranus was a disruptive energy in a water house. And then Neptune, it looks like it's kind of far away, but like as Uranus would have been leaving the 8th house, Neptune would have been coming in. And so it's, and when she passed away, Neptune was almost out, or if not out of her 8th house. She had kicked her issues by the time she passed away, which is great. But unfortunately, at the death of her son, Neptune was here on her moon. So again, unfortunately, that would have stepped up a great deal of emotional anguish. And she dealt with it not with substances, but that was really, really hard for her to deal with. And Waterhouse issues are issues that are really hard for you to deal with. They're really hard for you to speak about publicly. I think that it's great that she did publish her book, even posthumously, and I think that her daughter was really brave in doing it and kind of just like putting it all out there. I think it is what her mother would have wanted, but it really humanized her and gave her the ability to tell her story, hopefully so that people might just have a better understanding of what it was really like rather than what it looked like. But at the time, she was still dealing with this grief, and this Neptune in the 8th house, I think it's just like really the sense of like you can't get anybody close enough, like we talked about with Elvis's 8th house Pluto that he had in his birth chart. Neptune is like an erasing effect, and so the people who you felt you were close to and you were able to build these connections with, like nothing you do seems to be connecting you to the people who you love very dearly. It is really disconcerting because she would have lived her whole life with 3 planets in the 8th house, and she'd learned how to function them so that she could be close to people. And then Neptune comes through this house and severs some of those connections, or at least gives the feeling of severance, which is really tough to deal with unless you know what's going on. And most people don't. That's why we study this energy and explain it. Well, we, not multiple people. That's why I'm passionate about this, is because just developing the understanding, even if you don't like what you now know, it helps you to learn to cope with it, because these transits are years long, and you can begin to make different choices of thinking about your long-term good, or even knowing, okay, while Neptune is going through my 8th house, I'm not going to feel as close to the people I love, and that's going to suck, but I'm going to figure it out. Or Neptune through the 12th house of like, regular reality isn't satisfying and I don't understand it, but I have to be a social participant. Or I can move to a cabin in the woods and grow my nails really long, right? That you have options, but if you don't understand what's going on, you can feel overwhelmed and begin to make choices that aren't going to serve you well in the long term. So I think I've said everything that I want to say on this topic. I hope that it's helpful and I hope that it's useful. And I'm easy to find if you want to find me to discuss Waterhouse energies. But I wanted to give an intense topic a look in hopefully as neutral as possible way to just help you understand what some of this stuff looks like. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.